HBO Max Generation is an ensemble dramedy centering on a group of high school students exploring their sexuality in a modern world. Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with a brand new TV review, and today we're discussing a new dramedy by HBO Max by the name of Generation. We got the first 3 episodes today, and I'm gonna let you all know what I thought of the first 3 episodes and if it's worth checking out in this spoiler-free review. But before we dive into it, as you can see on the screen now, make sure you're following me on all my other social media accounts, which you can find those links in the description below. If you are new to the channel, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing to the channel, and while you all are at it, make sure you hit that notification bell. That way you can get the alert for when I drop new content. It would mean a lot to me if you all can like and share this review. It helps out the channel, but I also appreciate all the support. And in the comments below, let's discuss this new show. Let me know if you all have seen the first 3 episodes, and of course, if you've seen it, let's discuss it. Your pros, your cons. If you are a Gen Z, does it kind of have a true representing how people of that age act? Or if you're not, if you're a millennial like myself, or even someone a little bit older, let me know your thoughts on how they're interpreting this newer generation of Gen Z, as they call it. Let's have a great discussion about this show in the comments below. So for me personally, I saw this trailer about a month or 2 ago, and it definitely gave me some vibes of, number one, if you all have been following my channel for a while, you know I love me some HBO content, but I definitely got some vibes of Euphoria, which is one of my favorite shows in the last couple years, and I just love what that show has to say about that generation and just the trials and tribulations that the teens go through in that show. So it kind of gave me those vibes, but also there was a show on HBO by the name of We Are Who We Are by Luca Guadagnino, which was a very interesting coming of age, a little bit more of a serious show, not as many fun moments in that show just because of the subject matter and different things that those characters tackle, but it kind of reminded me of those 2 shows. So I was really intrigued to see, okay, HBO, I'm already on board, and then seeing the trailer, seeing the cast, seeing this being a kind of a coming of age type of tale throughout the trailer, seeing this, you know, Gen Z, how they're dealing with their sexuality, dealing with, you know, being in high school, accepting different things, accepting different people. So it had my intrigue, and here we are discussing the first 3 episodes, starting off with episode 1, and also just a little bit of background about this show. You have the showrunners Zelda and Daniel Barnz, who is a daughter and a father team coming together. The daughter Zelda is putting a little bit of her life, you know, this isn't based on true stories, but it's kind of based on her experience as a Gen Z, and of course her dad is a director and writer, and kind of his sensibilities sort of coming together to bring us this show about these high school students exploring the modern world, being a Gen Z category. So let's get into this review, starting off with this first episode, which again is spoiler free. I'm just going to touch on my thoughts of the first 3 episodes, pros, cons, and if I'll be back every week to exploring what this show has to offer. So kind of jumping into this first pilot episode, which basically synopsis reads: a group of high school students whom exploration of modern sexuality, vices and all, test deeply entrenched beliefs about life, love, nature of the family, and conservative community. So this first episode was really unique. It is a lot of things about the show that I really enjoy, and there's some things that just feel a little bit clunky, and just the execution isn't all the way there for me quite yet. And in this first episode, what I really enjoyed was the angle in which this show kind of introduced us to these characters, right? We're introduced to Chester, who out of this entire cast, this is one of the few actors that I'm very familiar with, which is Justice Smith. He plays Chester. He's out, he's gay, he's proud of it, he wears his clothes, he has his violations of clothes he wears, but he's very just kind of, he knows who he is as a person. At least you think that from the surface. So we meet Chester, and within this kind of pilot episode, we're kind of introduced to the 3 main characters of the show so far. One being Chester, and kind of his subplot involves his new guidance counselor by the name of Sam, who's also an outed man who can kind of relate to what Chester's going through. He's a black man just like Chester. You kind of get an understanding of kind of where he can connect to this guidance counselor. He's younger, he's a little bit more hipper than his previous guidance counselor, and they have some things that they can relate to, as well as we're introduced to another character by the name of Greta, who is a young girl who's, this show really does tackle sexuality and, you know, being outed and being comfortable with being bi or being, you know, straight or whatever the case may be. So we have Greta, who lives with her aunt, who I believe her aunt's name was Anna, if I'm not mistaken. She lives there. You get a little bit of understanding of her family situation. She's gotten probably the most family backstory so far of the 3 episodes, but you see Greta, and she very kind of keeps to herself, very quiet, and she has a crush on this young girl by the name of Riley, which out of the characters so far, Riley is the most interesting character for me personally. She's creative, she loves to take pictures, but she has this kind of rebellious side, this rebellious nature. She's kicked out of her previous school, which is like a high upper echelon type of school, and she went down to this new school. So Riley so far is a very fascinating character, and Greta has a crush on her, and it's really interesting to see this dynamic so far. So again, Chester, main character, Greta, and then we transition into Nathan, who is a kid who has a sister, who has two sisters actually. There's one sister that goes by the name of Naomi, and they have some really interesting chemistry, and they have a really good loving relationship, but then something happens in further episodes, in episode 2 in particular, that kind of breaks their foundation of being a really good brother and sister dynamic. But either way, Nathan is a straight male, but he is bi. He tells that to his best friend, who is Riley, and there's a situation going on with Nathan in regards to Naomi and Nathan and potentially another character that they both have interest in. And in regards to Nathan, he doesn't want to let people know that he's bi, except for his best friend. And as the episodes kind of progress, you kind of see him tackling him being bisexual, which is, again, another bonus about this show. It does tackle the idea of figuring out who you are as a person. Again, I've related this show to Euphoria and We Are Who We Are, because those are two shows that focus on a younger generation discovering who they are as young people, discovering the different things that go on in the modern world, technology, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and how all that kind of shapes them in regards to personas and being categorized as a Gen Z, right? Thinking that this show is all about they know everything, they have a certain lingo, they want to be a part of everything, they have these different categories they put themselves in, kind of box themselves in a certain group. So I kind of love how this first episode throws you into the mix. It's centered around this high school party, and the really unique thing about this first pilot episode is we have this kind of situation where we get different perspectives of the same situation. So we were introduced to Chester and how he comes to school, how he gets a dress code violation, and how we see the perspective of the other students seeing that exact thing happen. Same goes on with this night party as we meet Nathan and his situation. So I really enjoyed the creative aspect of the first pilot episode. It really kind of kicks off this show. In regards to some of my criticisms with the first episode, there were some clunky editing moments. There were some moments where I felt like the direction was a little bit unguided in regards to a character like Greta. She's very kind of awkward. She's kind of kept, I don't want to say awkward, but she keeps to herself, right? And she has these awkward moments in regards to, okay, how do I get the attention of this girl that I'm really interested in, as in being Riley, but she's not completely out yet. She doesn't want to let people know that she's attracted to this girl. So there's moments with that character in particular that I felt like the direction was a little bit kind of clunky. The acting was a little bit underwhelming. Again, it plays to the character that she's kind of, again, of an awkward type of character. But there were some moments in the first episode I'm just like, there's things I really enjoy. There's this subplot of this girl who's giving birth in a bathroom. I'll just kind of leave it at that. So there are some interesting beats that made me intrigued to see, okay, what's episode 2 all about, which brings us to that moment, which was called Dickscovery, if I'm not mistaken, is the name of the second episode, which simply revolves around the school has this club fair day, and they're interrupted by a school lockdown, which something I really enjoyed about this episode is how in this generation, especially Gen Z, we've had so many unfortunate incidents with school shootings and mass shootings that it's almost like the show kind of points a light at how it's almost normalized that these kids are like, oh, here's another lockdown. And it's just kind of it shouldn't be this normal, right? There are some moments in episode 2 where the kids are nervous, they're scared, they're kind of kept into a room, and kind of their truth comes out in regards to how they feel about being in a lockdown, how they feel about mass shootings, how they feel about how their generation is so used to mass shootings. So I kind of like what the story is telling within this second episode, as well as exploring more of the character development, Chester and Sam's relationship, which is very interesting. When you all see this show regarding Chester and his relationship with his guidance counselor, it's more so Chester kind of almost being attracted to his teacher, which if you guys saw, I covered it last year on my channel with FX on Hulu. A teacher is not the guidance counselor is not really flirting and doing anything inappropriate. It's more so of Chester's character, but it's really interesting to see that dynamic of where that kind of storyline goes. But again, going back into that second episode, I really enjoyed how, again, the show is just like, it shouldn't be normalized that these kids are just kind of like, oh, we're in a lockdown. There's potentially a mass shooter. There might not be a mass shooter. We have these, it seems like every quarter. So it's really interesting, again, how in America and guns and just how we're almost just kind of desensitized to something that, 15, 20 years ago was just like unheard of, school mass shootings, but unfortunately with just unfortunate events, breaking news, tragedies going. It seems like every couple of years we have like a mass shooting that is almost, again, just like normalized in this generation. That it's just something that just, it's a lockdown compared to like when I was in school. The worst thing that we would have was like a tornado alert, right? And how to prepare for that. So it's really kind of interesting how they kind of shine a light on this generation's take on tragedies that's happened in the generation before them, which brings us into the last episode. And so far out of the three, Episode 2 is my favorite, and we go into this third episode, which was titled Toasted, which is essentially, as the title alludes to, we have our characters having a little bit of influence in regards to, okay, we know this generation has really, we're in a world now where like most of the states have legalized drugs, and we see these younger high school students, which I don't know if they've established what age group they're in. I believe 16, 17, sophomore, junior year in high school. But, as I digress, we see this episode is kind of split into two different groups. We have Nathan and his sister who, after episode 2, they have this kind of clashing of this boy that they're both interested in. And one of the siblings kind of takes a wrong turn with this character in regards to potentially going over the boundaries in regards to their relationship. So they're kind of dealing with that. In the meantime, they're celebrating their sister's. She's having a wedding rehearsal, and we have our other set of characters that are going to a aquarium and they're getting high. And there's a conversation about jellyfish and how jellyfish have no heart and have no brains, and they're just coasting through life. And there's kind of a conversation being had between Chester and Greta in regards to them kind of going through the motions, right? And being kind of characters that are just kind of going through, people look at us in a certain way, but there's more to us than what meets the eye. In the same time, again, we have this kind of back and forth with Naomi and her brother, Nathan, going through their little drama. So again, didn't want to dive too heavily into the spoilers because I think this show does have, again, a lot to say about Gen Z in regards to the stereotype that we always assume that the Gen Z is unfocused. They're constantly looking for new things. They constantly think they know everything. And there's a little bit of truth to that, right? This show is a dramedy, so there is some comedic relief. Some of the jokes were a little bit too on the nose for me regarding like stereotypical jokes that you would assume teenagers talk like. And it almost seems like they're almost written too well. Like the teenagers are almost too old for their age, which plays into Generation Z, right? That they know everything. They have their phones to their disposal. They can Google something and just know everything at the palm of their hand. So it plays into that, but some of the jokes didn't really sit with me in regards to, I didn't find some of the jokes funny, but for the most part, there are certain characters that are placed in the show to be comic relief. I think of a character named Andrea, I believe is her name, and she's a black girl, and she has two dads, and her whole shtick is, she makes these very inappropriate jokes towards the LGBTQ community. Nothing with like menacing jokes that mean to hurt people, but she says these kind of smarky comments about the gay community, but she's like, oh, I can say that because I have two gay dads, right? So they have this like running joke with her character, as well as you have a character like Nathan, who's a little, again, he's balancing the life between being kind of a cool kid, but he's bisexual, but he doesn't want to come out, and only his best friend knows, into later episodes that you'll kind of discover. And then again, I think the most kind of interesting character to me, again, is a secondary character by the name of Riley, who really intrigues me, and I'm really excited to see what her and Greta's relationship turns out to be. And of course, you have Chester, who's kind of the main lead of the show, played by Justice Smith, his relationship with his guidance counselor, his relationship with his grandmother, who he really loves, and you kind of find out a little bit of each character's family a little bit, and you learn a little bit about Justice and his love for his grandmother. But he's someone that is definitely, he has the jokes, he's the lead of the show, he has the dramatic moments, and he has this persona where you think that he knows all the answers, he knows who he is as a person, but there's still a lot to meets the eye with that character Chester. So long story short, is Generation worth checking out? I think so. I will warn you all, just like I said with Euphoria, which is a very kind of heavy subject matter with sexuality. There's a lot of sex, there's a lot of, nudity in the show. So I will warn you all, there are some moments that can be a little uncomfortable for some people. To me, I'm just like, okay, this show is going down that road. It is very MA for mature audiences. So I will warn you all in that sense. And in regards to me watching this on a week-to-week basis, there's enough there in this show that I enjoy. There's a lot of conversations to be had about a show like this, which is why I love shows like this. It's the conversations about identity, sexuality, how Generation Z takes in millennials, takes in baby boomers. It's a lot to be had in this show, and I think so far there's a lot more positives than there are negatives. So I will be hopefully watching this on a week-to-week basis, depending on if you all want me to review it, if you all are liking this review, if you all are watching the show, I will be back weekly. But if you're not watching it, there's really no point for me to review this every single week. But so far, 3 episodes in, I'm enjoying what I've seen, and I'm excited to see what the show has to offer. And I hope that you all would like to see me cover this on a weekly basis, which if you do, let me know in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on the episode. Give the video a thumbs up, and let's continue to have a conversation about not just shows like this, but let's just have conversations about discovery and figuring out different groups of people and not judging people just based on Gen Z and what you think of a certain perception of, someone that's outed, as someone that's gay, as someone that's straight, as someone that's bisexual. Let's have these conversations because we can only learn from one another versus being ignorant to certain things and not having these conversations that need to be had to understand each other as a people so we can become better as a people. So let's have that discussion in the comments below. As always, make sure to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell. That way you don't miss any of my other content. Hope you all once again enjoy this review, and we'll see you all on the next video.